the trolls are insane. They want to take away your work opportunities doing cartoon voices and meeting a cute girl who actually likes you.
These trolls are getting out of control, man. Radio Free ends with episode 418, and yes, you did read that title correctly. Another installment in the Better Than You Remember series, about, of all bands, Finntroll. Although in this case, it's almost more of a Better Than I Remember. You see, lately, I've been listening to a whole lot of Moonsorrow, which is something I do quite frequently, because, spoiler alert, Moonsorrow are actually a really good band. What? Hot takes are coming at you hard and heavy on this episode. And I've been listening to so much Moonsorrow lately that I thought maybe I'd revisit them, since I did a two-parter episode on them more than like 6 years ago. I thought, well, maybe I'll have something new to say. But I got to really thinking about it, and outside of maybe gussying up visual effects, I don't know if my opinion on Moonsorrow has changed at all since 2019. I still think this part in Uko Sen Yumalan Poika is some of the best pagan black metal shit I've ever heard. And the part later on in that song that goes like, might as well go over to Norway and give enslaved the old 1986 Cobra shirt rip.
Clean up your act.
They don't even need to be enslaved anymore because Moonsorrow are better at being enslaved than modern day enslaved is. To say nothing of the later Moonsorrow albums, which, unlike almost every other band ever, they got better as they went along, these Moonsorrow guys. Talking about that part in Rutoleto that goes like, or Jotunheim, you know, the part where it goes like, and who could forget the ending of Tulumirski? That'll have you burning so many goddamn churches down, you'll rip another hole in the ozone layer. So yeah, I could put new graphics on it or whatever, but I don't think my stance on Moonsorrow has changed enough to warrant a new episode. Still would like to cover them again, but I need to figure out a new angle to come at it from. Now, if you know anything about Moonsorrow, you know perhaps the biggest reason why they're such a great band is the songwriting of band leader Henry Sorvali. Now, he's been involved in all sorts of stuff, so I figured why not cover another band that he's been involved with. He might be most famous nowadays to the modern day black metal listener, specifically my own audience, as the guitarist for Vargrav. But he's only done one album with those guys so far, and that really is more of a VKOz project than a Sorvali one. So as far as satiating my Moonsorrow addiction goes, Vargrav's out.
That boy is our last hope.
No. There is another.
Now, depending on how much you know about Moonsorrow and about Henry Sorvali in particular, you know there is another band that he is heavily involved with that somewhat stylistically abuts Moonsorrow, and it's probably, out of all his projects, the one that pays his bills the most. That, of course, being Finntroll, a band that I have something of a conflicted relationship with. You see, before I took the Brett Stevens pill and got really seriously into black metal, there was a period of time in my early teenage years where I listened to Finntroll quite a lot. Later on, I sort of fell away from them. Wasn't really a style that interested me as much. And then even later on, I got heavily into Moonsorrow, and I was like, holy shit, dude, this is the keyboardist for Finntroll? And eventually, it came to pass that whenever I would go through a heavy Moonsorrow listening phase, I would go back and revisit Finntroll. You know, the first time I did it, I was like, okay, that was a little bit of nostalgic fun. Anyways, I'm gonna go listen to Branicald. Then later on, I end up back at the same point of the cycle, listen to a whole bunch of Moonsorrow, go, you know what, Finntroll, why the hell not? And I listen to him again, and then this time around I'm like, you know, for being something of the epitome of what Fenris called the
silly and spastic and merry and jumbled
school of folk metal, this shit actually isn't really that bad. Anyways, I'm gonna go listen to Branicald. And so we now come to the most recent reiteration of the cycle, wherein I listened to a bunch of Moonsorrow and eventually came around to re-listening to Finntroll again. And this time around, it took me a whole lot longer to stop listening to Finntroll. And eventually I came to the conclusion that, honestly, Finntroll's pretty fucking dank.
Move this man!
Now hang on a second, okay? Things were different this time around. For starters, I didn't go listen to Brandicald this time. Instead, I went and listened to Gerzolf. A very cool new black metal band heavily influenced by Brandicald that I've been getting into recently. But more importantly than that, when I listened to Finntroll with an open mind, I noticed a lot of very interesting things going on that kind of set it apart from most of the other bands playing the same style of folk metal. The style of folk metal that usually makes me go,
Brother,
yeah, generally not into that. But Finntroll's got a little extra special sauce on it. And I think a lot of that has to do with their connection to proper black metal. Okay, because I think everybody knows the legendary origin of Finntroll. Way back in the mid-90s, couple of drunk Finns, one of them was playing black metal riffs. The other guy starts doing a goofy polka thing on a keyboard. First guy's like, hey,
that's pretty dang good. It's not half bad.
Behold, we've invented a new genre. But here's the thing, Slick. All the guys from those early days of Finntroll were involved with proper classic Finnish black metal bands. Talking about Barathrum and Thy Serpent, which, if you use the Kevin Bacon rules, that means technically they're only 2 degrees of separation away from both Beherit and Goat Moon. And though the whole thing with the one guy jamming riffs and the other guy goofing around on the keyboard is a fun origin story, if you listen real closely to especially early Finntroll, you realize there were some pretty immediate antecedents to the Finntroll style within Nordic black metal. Specifically, I'm talking about Tartaros, whom I covered almost 4 years ago on episode 245, but even more than that, Nagash's bands Covenant and especially Troll, whom I covered on episode 249, also almost 4 years ago. Specifically, Troll's 1996 album, Drep de Kristne, pretty much has the Ichthyostega pre-evolved version of the classic Finntroll style of melody. And there's even a song on the album entitled Trollberg that basically just fucking sounds like Finntroll when it comes to incorporating sort of a darkly humorous polka style. Not only that, you can trace that kind of dark polka kind of thing even farther back into black metal history if you listen to early Arcturus. Now, the astute listener may point out that both of those examples weren't really straight up black metal with the guitars and the shrieking and whatnot. They were more like weird little keyboard interludes between the riffage. The first Finntroll album, Midnattens widunder, took the melodic style of those interludes and combined it with the more standard black metal type shit, essentially mashing those two disparate elements of that Troll album together to create one unified, unique sound. And honestly, they did a pretty fucking good job. Like this melody right here, this could 100% have come off of that Troll album or even a Covenant one. And to it, they add the percussive force of a bit of death metal and a touch of that sort of polka folkiness without losing too much in the way of proper black metal darkness. At least to my ears, this still sounds more like black metal than anything else. Alright, we're getting a little bit more polka-ish now, but at the same time, the riffing style has almost a bit of early In Flames, like Lunar Strain era shit to it, which y'all know that I'm a fan of. And I'm also a fan of blasting triumphant symphonic black metal a la Balsagar, which would be another touchstone for this sound. Then we just go into straight up keyboard with this wickedly mischievous but still very much malevolent tone to it. as we bring in more folk metal elements with the percussion before rolling back into that again very Covenant troll sounding intro melody. Now I would say this song, it's maybe 50% black metal, 50% folk metal. There's songs on this first Finntroll album that are honestly just straight up melodic black metal. Very good straight up melodic black metal. For instance, widunder, which leans heavily into a percussive style of black metal. Almost kind of thrashy, doesn't really have too much in the way of folky shit going on, both during the groove inflected parts or the more blasting parts like this one. This to me, this is just high quality melodic black metal shit. And anybody denying that, I'm gonna look at you funny. I might try to revoke your black metal card. Nothing personnel, kid. This is just undeniably good black metal shit. This sort of thrashy groove is also a very important element of the overall Finntroll sonic gumbo, in addition to their folky elements and their deedly doodly keyboards. I also like the part right here where they double time it. Really cool, simple but effective bit of songwriting. Also, I'm a big fan of Katla's vocals on this album in particular. And here's where we might even take a jump towards the future, or the past depending on how you look at it. Because this whole weird interlude section reminds me a whole lot of Vargrav, whom Henry Sorvali, aka Trollhorn, would end up joining almost a quarter century later. I said forward or backward in time because we all know Vargrav is very much an Emperor tribute project. But another cool thing going on here is some similarities with Moonsorrow in terms of how they gradually layer sounds together to create multiple movements within the same song. It's almost kind of like Moonsorrow light. You know, they managed to do that same sort of layered songwriting style in a song that's 3 or 4 minutes long as opposed to 8 or 12. It's a kind of high-minded composition I don't see from a lot of other folk metal bands playing a similar style, at least on a surface level. With all that said, yeah, there's definitely some pure black metal on this album, but there's also plenty of just straight-up Finntroll, polka, humpa metal goofiness. But honestly, the songs that are in that style, just as good. Now, this is some fucking Finntroll. And I think what keeps it from becoming too silly sounding for me is just how frenzied and intense and aggressive it is, despite the heavy dose of wackiness. It's an attitude thing. They still feel like they'd be down with killing some Christians in between taking big old swigs of meat or whatever. And there's still a bit of a thrashy feeling here too. Check this out. Almost kind of a tech thrash riff there. Nice. I appreciate it, and it's going to take us into the stormy, blasting, more melodic black metal, or maybe even almost Euro power metal style shit. Frenzied and aggressive, but still somehow it gels very nicely with the folky bits, like what you're hearing right here. It's about to go fucking nuts. We're going to go full dungeon synth, almost kinda summoning level of quality keyboard composition. If there's one thing Henry Sorvali knows how to do, it's pick a great keyboard sound and layer those sounds together to create some great black metal art. When you combine that with Somnium's heavy guitar work and Katla's brutal fucking vocals, you get, honestly, what I might consider to be a minor Dawn of the New Millennium black metal classic. I feel like if there were any other name but Finntroll on this album, a whole lot of black metal people would be all about this shit. Now the follow-up album, 2001's Jaktens Tid, is also pretty fucking great. It sounds a little bit more like stereotypically Finntroll, if that makes sense. Jaktens Tid is kind of where they really started to sound like what the stereotype of the Finntroll sound you've got playing in your head sounds like, if that makes any sense. It's also got one of the nastiest black metal piano riffs that I've ever fucking heard on the opening track.
Yeah, baby!
Properly trollish in affectation. And here's another example of them kind of being mini Moonsorrow, gradually bringing in the percussion with some great sound layering. The guitar sound on this album is a lot more thick, almost death metal-y, which would be a major element for Finntroll going forward. And the vocals are less black metal-y, more just straight up trollish. Katla again doing a great job. Unfortunately, this would be the last album that he sings on as he develops something like throat polyp, and eventually to take a back seat in favor of just writing lyrics going forward. And here we go, the all-important accordion, which isn't nearly as goofy as I remember it being. It actually ties in very well with these more shredding, melodic scale run riffs. And here we go, another great example of the almost Moonsorrow-ish, but in a more concise format style of epic songwriting. This song's only 5 minutes long, but it's got all these different component parts to it. All this very gradual sound layering, and despite that short runtime, it never really feels rushed. It almost kind of exists in its own pocket in time. And I'm a big fan of this very Bathory-esque chugging guitar part with the choral keys in the background. Supremely pagan metal sounding. And Katla sounds absolutely bonkers on vocals here. And despite this really long journey that the song took us on, they managed to tie everything perfectly back in to that piano riff from the beginning, such is the power of the Finntroll boys as songwriters. Now, as you could probably tell, they've upped the frenziedness aspect of their sound on this album compared to the debut, but they've also put considerably more of their time into crafting truly epic, majestic, atmospheric sections to these songs, most notably on the title track to this album. The keyboards at the beginning of this one really give it an almost apocalyptic feeling. And then they hit you with the folky shit, and it's fucking crazy. Actual proper Sami shamanic style yoiking, which might sound a bit ridiculous to some people, but I think it works within the context of the composition. Then the polka comes in with the more death thrash kind of riffing style, and it's all appropriately heavy. But when we get back to the shamanic incantations, this might be my favorite part of the track. Fucking awesome. Love the vocals on this one. Very appropriately trollish. And the song then takes a turn for the dark and the surprisingly black thrashy, and I mean that in the true sense of the word. Because the Finntroll boys hit us with a riff set that, apart from the backing keyboards, wouldn't be that out of place on a Sodom or even a Sabbath album. These kind of thrash break type sections existed on the first album, but they really become noticeable on Jaktens Tid, and they will become an even bigger part of the album afterwards. And unsurprisingly, that more percussive thrash metal approach translates very nicely into the more polka-ish cadence, and they can kind of slide in back between those two slightly different styles of groove very effectively to lengthen said brutal thrash breaks, which are some of the best parts of this era of Finntroll. So we've got two of the three Finntroll albums that I owned as a kid end up being pretty sick. The third one, however, this was the one that I really got into back in the day, and having re-listened to it perhaps the most out of these three albums over the past couple weeks, Nattfödd is probably my personal favorite Finntroll album. It's also most famous for being the one that's got the song on it, which kind of is Finntroll's breaking the law. You know, it's their Iron Man, it's their song everybody knows. Luckily for Finntroll, it's also a great song in its own right. New songwriting technique being utilized in several songs in this album is establishing a very strong central melody and then putting it through a bunch of build-ups and overall Moonsorrow style melodic variation to where these tracks become sort of a meditation and gradual expansion upon their central idea, as opposed to a sequential narrative of musical events. Like you'll notice the verse riff right here, it's got the melodic soul of that intro riff. Also, I love the new vocalist Wilska. Actually reminds me a lot of Sentence Amok, sort of halfway between singing and growling. And then you got your big gang shout part that everybody loves so much. World famous. With a panoply of different keyboard tones in the background, bolstering the very dense experience. And speaking of density, this song's middle section, with its racing keyboards gradually building up in intensity, really sets the stage for one of those all-important thrash breaks that I noted were becoming more important on the prior album to this. On this third Finntroll album, they go really nuts with them. This stuff gets really fucking heavy.
That's what's up, tubes.
Can't complain about that. Healthy amount of groove and a surprising amount of very trollish brutality to take us back into those flowing deeply duty keyboard melodies they inherited way back from the Covenant and Troll era of black metal and have since carried forward into the new millennium. But as great as Trollhammaren is, that's not even close to being my favorite song on this album. I personally gravitate more towards some of the deeper cuts, the songs that really start doing some interesting stuff with the overall Finntroll sonic profile. like Manishko Pestin, which is notable for being the most aggressive song they had written to date, at least to my ears. If it wasn't for the keyboard, these guitar riffs would not be out of place on like a Unleashed album. You know, sort of a Swedish death metal feeling. And vocalist Wilska absolutely mirrors that sort of aggression. But it's still Finntroll, okay? You still gotta have the evil polka shit going on. And here it's some of the best evil polka shit they've ever done. Comes in kind of dark and mischievous, takes a turn towards the epic with these more shining keyboards, and then goes back into the dark, mischievous, and subterranean territory, utilizing just about every different synth patch Trollhorn has on his keyboard. Then when we venture back towards the more Swedish death metal style out of the synth-laden territory, we come to my favorite part of the song. Again, it's the middle section. Finntroll always really good at these. And the build-up here is absolutely nuts. Coming in with those double bass black metal drums, rising keyboards, eventually all erupting into this flourish of melody. For me, that hits pretty much the same way as a Moonsorrow build-up. It's just done in a more concise format because this is the more pop-oriented project of the two. I just find it really impressive how they managed to have all these epic build-up and release moments inside songs that are like 4 minutes long. But in addition to the more aggressive songs, some of my favorite stuff on this album tends more towards the dark and doomy side of the equation, which wasn't really a part of the Finntroll sound before this. Particularly on the penultimate track, Grotan's Barn, which functions as something of a dark mirror to the structure of the Trollhammaren song, coming in with a very strong keyboard melody, but in this case it's a lot darker. And then the rest of the song is sort of a variance on that central keyboard melody. And here's where you really get to see Wilska show off his kind of sing-growl style. Very soulful and melancholic, but also capable of becoming quite bestial, particularly when he starts overlaying vocals like he's doing here. On top of the panoply of different synthesized folk instrument effects. I think there's a hurdy-gurdy in there. Got your boingers, your Jew's harp, as well as the icy encasing of Henry Sorvali's signature choral effects. But the whole thing is based around these very strong guitars. All these other elements just kind of orbited, giving more force to the pulse of this music. Guitar part right here is particularly interesting because it reminds me a whole lot of something you might hear in Isengard or Storm, Fenris' two folk side projects, which as most people know I'm a giant fan of. And when the double bass comes back in, we get those more aggressive vocals from Wilska, layering black metal shrieks on top of death metal growls, kind of like a trollish Glenn Benton. And then because it's third album era Finntroll, we gotta have a really nasty sort of death groove thrash metal kind of break. This album excels in utilizing those. And the scream when we head back into the fast double bass drumming right here, fucking awesome. Properly trollish. I don't know, I'm just as surprised as you were to find that I actually like Finntroll quite a bit, and I haven't even really gotten into their central concept that much, mostly just been talking about the music. The Finntroll is sort of a mythic, legendary character that the Finntroll guys kind of center all their lyrics around. Apparently, way back in ye olden times, some gaggle of goofballs, probably fucking Swedes, went over to Finland, tried to convert everybody to insert desert religion here, and some crazy guy came out of the woods at them with an axe and just started killing all of them, scared them off. This dude was so fucked up and insane that said missionaries assumed it was actually a fucking troll, hence the Finntroll. The Finntroll boys lean into this concept on all three of the albums that I'm familiar with by including sort of a troll attack track, kind of a found footage horror story that reoccurs on each album during its shortest song. Usually goes a little something like
In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus.
And they expand this sort of mythology out even farther with reoccurring characters like Ribfodder, the king of the trolls in the north. They've even got sort of a Carl Sanders, Saurian Meditations, semi-acoustic or really just more kind of clean sounding album entitled Visorom Slutet that combines folky stuff like this with darkwave, neoclassical, vaguely dungeon synth such as and even a lot of straight up dark ambient stuff like to create sort of a soundscape type of album that I found to be quite interesting to listen to. Now, as something of a recently reborn Finntroll fan, I'm not as familiar with their later stuff as I am with the first 3 albums. I have listened to them. I liked Jordens Djup and Vredesved quite a lot. Wasn't into Bloodsvept and Niflvind as much. They were a little goofy for me, although I could see them growing on me. You know, still gotta listen to them a few more times. But overall, I gotta say, Finntroll, way better band than I remembered them being. And hopefully over the course of this extra long episode that I did not expect to be so fucking long, I have managed to convince at least some of you out there to give them another shot if you'd written them off in the past. Whatever the case may be, thanks for listening or watching or whatever the fuck you did, and I'll see you next time.
I thought I told these trolls to suck my fucking ass crack.